Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Have you ever wondered what a hobo might carry in his pockets during the 1930s? Well, today we're going to do a hobo pocket dump. Stay tuned. A hobo in the 1930s had to carry everything on his person or in his bindle. That could have been any sort of a bag or a sack. Sometimes you see the stick over the shoulder with the bindle bag. That was used, but not necessarily as common. You would find sea bags and suitcases. So today we're going to do a look at what a hobo might carry in his pockets were he traveling light or just going around from place to place as day labor, having left the bulk of his gear perhaps back at the hobo jungle where it could be watched over by other hobos, friends of his, perhaps a traveling partner, or many times there would be an older hobo or two who were no longer able to ride the rails and look for work, and they would stay in camp, keep things together, and be preparing that mulligan stew for everyone when they got home. Everybody, of course, supposed to bring a little cabbage, something to put in the pot, and something to help out in the local jungle. Now, where a person might carry their belongings varied from hobo to hobo. Again, there's no standardized gear or gear list. It pretty much just depended on whatever they could find, whatever they could borrow or perhaps buy with the little money they could earn. And so they would use not only their pants pockets, but of course their coat pockets. Many of them, of course, these work jackets, very large pockets for sandwiches and everything else. And of course, then there was the hip pockets. So there's many ways you could carry something besides your vest pockets and other items that you could carry on your body. That way it'd always be with you, be hard to lose. The first item, and of utmost importance, would be some sort of a pocket knife. This is a hawkbill pruning knife. And of course, this shape lends itself to all sorts of uses around the farm and pruning orchards and all of that sort of thing that a man might find as a day laborer. And it was very useful for other tasks as well, peeling vegetables and things like that for that mulligan stew. Along with that, he might wish to carry some sort of a comb. These were very common. Of course, staying groomed and well put together was very important. Many times they got hauled in before the magistrate or the judge, and if they could have a neat and clean appearance, it would often help them get out of jail time and maybe just go on their way without any sort of trouble. Along with that, you would of course need some sort of a sharpening stone. This so you could keep your knife sharp and use it. You didn't want to use a rock that's hard on a blade, and of course a proper sharpening stone is going to go a long way to helping you maintain your main cutting tool, which you would use of course during the day. You might also carry some sort of a small metal matchbox. You can see this if you're interested. Of course, you would have your matches, and these are safety matches, so you'd be able to strike them on the box, and this particular metal box has an opening on each side so you can access the paper there, the striker part. Another indispensable item would be a bit of twine or cord. This would be extremely useful in doing all sorts of work and binding things together. And of course, even in modern day survival and bushcraft, it's always recommended you carry several feet of cord in your pocket with you at all times. The next item he would perhaps carry would be a stub of a candle. And you often read in a lot of the old literature that they had a stub of a candle in their pockets. Now, if you've not burned candles a lot, you may not understand this, but most candle holders are only about 1.5 inches or so tall. Well, when the candle burns down far enough that it's close to the rim of that candle holder, if you let it burn down below the surface, it's almost impossible to get out of there. The wax will melt, and you'll have to actually dig it out with a knife or a blade of some sort. So you would want to pull that out while there was still enough to get a hold of the candle, and you could remove it from the candle holder and put a new one in. So there were lots of candle stubs. Now, back in the old days, they were made from beef tallow and sheep tallow and things like that, but beef made really good. And so what you could do is you could also eat these because they were made from tallow, and in an emergency, it would be an emergency food. He would also want to carry some sort of a change purse. There were many change purses in those days. Of course, people didn't always use a lot of paper money, although it was around. But a hobo might wish to keep his money separate, and when he would earn it, then he would make sure and have a safe place to keep it. This is a 1924 peace dollar. He would have some dimes and some nickels, maybe a standing Liberty quarter, a few pennies, and just enough for him to maybe get to the next place, maybe buy a sandwich, something at the local town. But he would be very happy to have any of that along with him. Of course, many hobos were broke, and they always had to watch out because sometimes the men that ran the train would often hit them up for money, and if they had at least 2 bits, if they had 50 cents, they would be allowed to ride the train, so it was important for them to keep some change on them at all times. This $1.80 would be of utmost importance to him, and he would work hard, and he would save his money. Many times, remember, they were working men. They had families back home, so they had to save all that they could and be very frugal with what they spent. Riding safely in a rear pocket would be a nice soft cotton bandana. Of course, not just for blowing the nose and taking care of extra sweat issues when you're working hard, but this would work as an improvised bandage. You could use this to wash and clean up with in the hobo jungle. You could use it to signal with it perhaps. You could tie it around your neck or mouth in case there was a dust storm, or when you're going through a tunnel and all that smoke and cinder ash would come up from the steam engine. It would really be a big help to help filter that out so you could breathe. They would also wish to carry perhaps a small fishing kit, which is simply a cork, a hook, about 6 to 8 feet of line. This is simply a matchstick, a kitchen match that is poked through a hole. It's all held in taut, and this is of course a piece of split shot. And that would be very easy to carry. Of course, this is for hand line fishing. You would lean over a log and you would jig the line up and down, hoping to catch perhaps something to eat for supper. You would also carry perhaps a stub of a pencil, as well as a piece of chalk or crayon. This, of course, would be to make notes. This would be to make those all-important hobo markings on fence posts and telephone poles, areas outside of people's homes and barns, which would be a signal to the other hobos that it was either a good place to eat or a good place to work, or perhaps they were mean or had a bad dog, or they were likely to call the law on you. So these were very important marking tools that every hobo would carry of some sort or the other. Of course, it didn't have to be white. It could be a black crayon, really anything they could get their hands on. Modern hobos today would carry something like a Sharpie. If you're going to carry a pencil, you need to have some sort of paper. This is from a simple shopping bag. Paper, of course, very common. Brown paper used to wrap up parcels and all sorts of things, so this would be very common, usually discarded. This could be used, of course, for a bit of a fire starter, as well as making notes and things for one's job as you were working, to make notes, make sure you did exactly what the foreman asked you to do so you could be a good employee. Perhaps one of his most prized possessions would ride inside of his vest pocket. It would be, of course, a pocket watch of some sort. This watch actually belonged to my great-grandfather, and he carried it around quite a bit. It might have had a gold chain on it at once, but because of the need for money and, of course, security, someone sees a gold chain, they assume that you are well off. So it would either be left at home or it could be hawked for that extra cash money. You could, of course, replace that easier than you could your very valuable pocket watch. This would be of utmost importance to make sure that you stayed on the train schedule, to meet your fellow hobos at the appointed time, as well as to make sure that you showed up to work when your boss wanted you there. So here they are, if you're trying to take a list and keep notes on what was in the video. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this little foray into the hobos of the 1930s, the lives they lived, and some of the things that they might have carried. We appreciate your support, all the views, and all the wonderful comments. This is James Bender for Waypoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. And while you're down there, you'll also find the waypointsurvival.com link. And this is where you can sign up to take survival and bushcraft classes here at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos. And we'll talk to you next time.